I don't think this is a secret that if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers and the company is stronger. KKR is really going the whole distance of broad-based ownership, investments in the facilities, in the people, and then the community engagement work. It's quite unique. In the case of CHI, we've invested in new break rooms. We're building an on-site medical facility. We've air-conditioned the manufacturing plant, and rank-and-file employees, as well as management, participate in the ownership of the company.
The model that KKR has brought to us, whereby we invest in our colleagues in the workforce, is an incredibly powerful model. We employ over 875 family members. Financial challenges may arise from time to time if they're living paycheck to paycheck. We found over the years that that can impact their performance at work, and most importantly, it affects them as a person and how they're doing. So financial coaching and financial wellness is fundamentally critical to making sure we're nurturing the full associate, not just who they are at work, but helping them in any way we can throughout their life.
Profit sharing aligns everybody's interests, and you can combine that with financial wellness coaching. You've got a new model for success in America, period, full stop.
My financial situations are a bunch of medical bills that got piled up. I didn't think that I was gonna go anywhere with the amount of credit that I had. I was stressed. I had no hope. I was like, oh, this is never gonna end.
We moved down here to find better jobs and have a better opportunity, and we wanted my daughter, 4 years old, who had been sleeping in the same room as us, to be able to have her own room. So trying to buy a house, but my credit score wasn't looking too great.
Financial coaches lean into your life, and they help you resolve your credit reporting issues, help you understand how money works, how to become a homeowner, how to retire, how to build wealth, and how that's different from making money.
Financial coaching gives them a set of tools and a set of resources to navigate financially whatever path is most important in terms of their dreams and their aspirations, and really hopefully create financial freedom.
I've been in debt for so long and stressed out from it, and in the weeks that I've known Natalie, we've actually got a big chunk that we're working on of my credit. My situation isn't going to change overnight. It will take a little bit, but I'm patient enough to wait because I want a better life for myself and for my daughter.
Helping me get the derogatory mark off my credit score allowed my wife and I to buy a house.
Transformational reclaiming of your life has to go from abnormal to the new normal.
My hope is that this combination of access to ownership and participating in financial outcomes, plus financial literacy training and skill building, will lead to great outcomes for our colleagues.
Welcome back, everybody. Delighted to have you with us today. We are going to now speak with another friend, Pete Stavros, who is a partner and co-head of America's private equity for KKR. Welcome, Pete. Glad to have you. He'll be in studio with us, or rather coming in via technology, and in studio with us is our fearless leader, Chairman, Founder, and CEO, John Bryant. John, over to you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. You bring class and substance to everything you touch.
Thank you, John.
Pete, you're a special soul, my man. And thanks for being with us today. And in absentia, I also want to send my best regards to Henry Kravitz and the entire family there. Henry, I want to give credit because I've known him for a long time, and he gave a huge philanthropic check to us. But you saw something different. You didn't see philanthropy, you saw business. You saw, and this is an and, not an or, because we need both. But philanthropy may not be all that sustainable. You saw something I think is weird, and I've only seen it in 2 or 3 leaders in the private sector so far. I'm going to give credit to Ed Bastian at Delta, who is also part of this program, who has a shared equity philosophy. And in this pandemic, it's really served him well. And you guys, your leadership, before you have the big job that you have now, you had this philosophy in the industrials group at KKR, and maybe, by the way, Pete, you can explain a little bit how what KKR is to those who may not be all that familiar. You're one of the biggest companies through ownership in the world. But even in one of your divisions, I think it's $200 billion in annual revenue and 800,000 employees is some crazy number of the companies you own. It's just unbelievable. And now you've got an even bigger job. But you saw in this industrials group, you correct me if I'm wrong here, Pete, I get this wrong, that there was a more enhanced model than management and employees being adversarial to each other. You thought that the more you supported the hourly worker, not just the CEO at the company that you have an ownership stake in, but the hourly worker, if you support those workers, they're going to lean in more because now they're stakeholders or shareholders. Now, I may be getting far afield here. I don't want to speak for you. Let me just ask you, like, again, this is crazy talk for some on Wall Street because you're acting like somebody who cares about Main Street. I think it's brilliant. I think it's actually genius. And I think your numbers probably show such. But tell us what your philosophy is and why you believe this way, and then we can get into a bit about what we're doing together, what we've done together.
Okay. Great. Well, thanks for having me, John. Always great to be with you. It's a pleasure to be able to tell the story a little bit. So as you mentioned, I work at KKR. We're a large global asset manager. So the division that I work in, as you mentioned, has almost 1 million employees. We own, dozens of companies, and that puts you in a position of significant responsibility because you're now overseeing the careers and lives of hundreds of thousands of employees. And as you mentioned, in the manufacturing part of our business, so where we are overseeing companies that are manufacturers, those companies are unusual because the vast majority of the workforce are hourly employees. This is not like a software company where you've got a small number of employees and they're all software engineers and highly paid salespeople. Most of what you got in a manufacturing company are hourly workers, paid an hourly wage, barely getting by. Most are in debt, can't survive a financial emergency, everything that, Operation Hope seeks to help with. And that huge category of employee is absolutely critical to the success of the company. So you've got this weird dichotomy of critical employees who are not paid particularly well, often don't like their jobs, are often at odds with the employer. I mean, one of the weird things about manufacturing, and if you just think about an hourly wage, what a massive misalignment of incentives to pay someone by the hour, as opposed to how the company's doing, how we're doing on quality and cost and on-time delivery and customer satisfaction. It's just how many hours you work. Yeah. And so this was something I grew up with. My dad was an hourly worker. He worked construction for 40 years.
I didn't know.
And so growing up, I really saw firsthand that misalignment of incentives. And my dad's a very smart man, and he was very careful to show my sister and me, hey, how screwed up is this system? I actually get paid more if we do poor quality because I often have to redo the work. And
more
so
hours.
It's double hours. And, a lot of times it's time and a half or double time trying to catch up. So that was kind of where it all started for me, was as a kid. And then as a young adult in graduate school, I had an opportunity to study in my second year kind of whatever I wanted. So I studied employee ownership, which was a really hot topic in the 1970s, and then slowly, became less common. And I wanted to study why and what happened and could it be relevant today. And then at KKR, which I joined 15 years ago, I had my first leadership opportunity running the manufacturing group, and that was an opportunity to put all this into practice. So that's kind of a little bit of the background on what we're doing here.
Yes, and it's just, to me, radical common sense, Lisa, that what Pete is doing is just genius. Because if the Bible says a house divided cannot stand. The union model, which is dignity rich and started in an effort to protect those who are left behind and from unfair practices and abuse, was critically needed. But at some point, the union model became this adversarial relationship between management and employee, and somehow almost protecting a middle class lifestyle. That's the wrong incentive, the wrong prioritization, because now you've got China and other countries that may not be playing by the rules or playing by the same rules, where they're going to eat our lunch because they're aligned.
Yeah.
And we've got to everybody wants to be an American but Americans. Like, we've got to understand that we're on the same team. And what I think you're doing is aligning that incentive package to say, as I said with the Deputy Secretary earlier, if Wall Street gets a bonus for working, then let's use the earned income tax credit for the average worker to get a bonus for working, so that everybody feels they're getting a bonus for leaning in. And your bonus, quote unquote, is to incentivize the workers to do more. As the company wins, they win. And if the company is not doing so well, then as the management steps back on compensation, so does everybody else. It seems fair. You also leaned in further and wanted to give them financial well-being training, which is where we came in with Operation Hope. And because of you and the leadership at KKR, we have really pioneered a model in the private equity space where we're providing hope inside the workplace for companies that a private equity firm would own, to bridge that gap between wealth and income inequality, and to harmonize that by reducing the stress. And I was not at all surprised that this model would work in rural, middle America, and not just urban Black America. But it was instructive, Pete, for us to go to Amish country. And we went there together. Before the pandemic hit, we were able to, be with each other. And this community didn't look like me. I was in the vast minority there, CHI overhead doors. And, I mean, there's literally Amish horse and buggies riding by. It was brilliant. So we go in and have this conversation, and it started out with people sort of with their arms folded. They didn't know what to expect. But within 20 minutes, they went from this, folded, to this, leaned in. And somebody who may not be at all on the same, maybe political stage with me, we end up on the same human stage together. We're agreeing. We're in massive agreement. And we ultimately find out, those folks ultimately said to me, and a few with tears in their eyes, Pete, like, can you help me change not just my financial picture, but my mindset? Because after listening to you, it's obvious that I'm stuck. And I need to unstick myself get unstuck so that my children have a pathway. And that me and my wife have a different perspective. That I now see through my employer that I'm not desperate or in survival mode. I can reimagine possibilities. And that all became as a result of our partnership together. I remember walking through that factory and having people who couldn't be further from me socially, from a socioeconomic, racial makeup, cultural makeup, saying, I'm an eagle. We were talking about eagles, buzzards, and turkeys in my presentation. What kind of bird are you? I'm an eagle. They're also saying, we're together. I don't know if that surprised you, Pete, but it pleasantly surprised me.
Let me ask Pete a question, if I may.
Yeah, sure.
So, Pete, I salute the work that you're doing. We all do. Let me ask you a question about the people, because clearly you recognized people as your greatest asset to all the acquisitions and management that KKR is doing. It seems to me you're also building trust, you're improving talent, and ultimately people's treasure, the way that they will manage their families and manage their lives. What kind of feedback are you getting? I would hope it would all be positive, but I know it takes time for some of this to work its way through. But as we look at what's going on in the world today, that whole notion of trust equity is missing in a lot of companies. Was this an opportunity for you to build trust, improve talent, and build treasure with your colleagues?
Yeah, it was. And look, it took, and it continues to take a long time every time we do it. When you walk into a new situation and we start talking about ownership, and we're going to invest in the workforce, and we're going to do personal financial coaching, we're going to invest in the facilities a different way, we're going to invest in you as people and as human beings and as trusted business partners.
Right.
You definitely get a lot of eye rolls. And I think that was what John was referring to, the first little while, even, somebody as captivating as John. People at the bottom of the economic ladder have been kicked around for decades. I mean, how many stories can we read about stagnating wages and people not being able to afford, $400 financial emergency? And I mean, the statistics are shocking. And so,
right.
Yeah, it's an opportunity to build trust. It takes a lot of time. in terms of feedback, and maybe this ties back into the Hope partnership, where the need for Operation Hope came from, first of all, is the backdrop that we all know around the country. This is desperately needed financial coaching.
Right.
But then when you add in the employee ownership aspect to it, and you start with a workforce that is in debt, 95% of the hourly workers that, at one of these factories in debt. And then they become owners and you start paying dividends, and maybe the first few dividends, they make $15,000
right,
with a promise of making $75,000, $100,000, and they've never seen anything like it before. We have a responsibility to prepare people for that, and frankly, we miss that. And at CHI Overhead Doors, I'll never forget walking the shop floor. I had gotten to know, a bunch of the folks, and one of the guys came up to me. This was after our third dividend. So in 18 months, he would have received, somewhere between $12,000 and $16,000 of additional income.
Wow. Over his base pay.
He came up to me, pardon me?
Over his base pay.
Over his base pay, exactly. So, he came up to me, tears in his eyes, saying, "Pete, I think I'm going to lose my house. I'm way behind." And it was like, "Dennis, how could that be? We've just paid 3 dividends in a short period of time." And he said, "Well, I bought a truck, and then I bought my brother a truck." And in that moment, we kind of, Allie Hartman, who John knows well, who's at our firm, helped me dissect this. We quickly went back over the last, 8 times we had done this, tens of thousands of employees, and all the heartwarming stories of people took vacations they could never have afforded before. They took honey.
That making money and building wealth are 2 different mindsets.
Well, even managing money.
Well, managing money. Money has velocity.
That's right.
And you don't even need to be an hourly worker to have this challenge. You can be an NBA star.
You can be anybody and have this, because nobody teaches you financial management in school. Think about it, whether it's junior high school, college, unless you're learning to be an accountant or you're learning to be a banker, and you want to be that when you grow up, which most people can't spell what they want to be when they grow up, and we change 2 or 3 times. So we have missed this opportunity in even our public and independent school systems. We don't teach kids that.
Yeah.
So to think about altering someone's life experience while they're in it, this is like putting gas in the car, or putting gas in the plane and changing the wings while it's flying.
Yeah.
Right?
No, look, this is everything, and I hope we get Pete back and able to finish this. I think people gotten the basic gist, but when we sat down with the workers there, it stopped being a black or a white conversation, or whether you're John, whether you're black, or whether I'm white. It became a green conversation.
Absolutely.
And they start saying,
and there's Pete again.
And I was just bragging about you.
We're putting more words in your mouth,
yeah,
Pete.
but this is like one of the most important conversations we could have, because this shows that this issue is not about black people or white people. In fact, 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. 70%.
That's right.
Live from paycheck to paycheck with too much month at the end of their money. The average American doesn't have $400 for an unplanned event. And then you get down to the working class, making hourly workers, and forget about it.
I know.
And so they get this dividend check without any coaching, and they go crazy, no different than an NBA player would or an NFL player would when they go from nothing to something.
Or anybody.
And they want to go buy a boat and a plane, or not a plane, but a boat.
Well, people that win the lottery do this too, right?
And people in the lottery.
So Pete, talk again. Sorry, we're glad you're back. Talk to us about what you did, so if people were the innovation, if you recognize that people are your greatest asset, and then you realize that ownership of a company, building trust, improving their talent, improving their treasure. But then the next piece of that, so it's a continuum, right? The next piece of that is, how do we help them manage that money? How do we help them have a new experience around financial literacy and economic empowerment? So we go back to you.
So maybe I'll just tell you about what John and you guys did at CHI Overhead Doors, the company you started the segment with that video. We've got 875 employees, and we started with workshops. And there were 600 people who signed up for the workshops. I think there was pretty broad understanding that this was needed. And so as you guys have discussed, everything from planning and budgeting to understanding the earned income tax credit to home ownership, that was all covered. And then we wanted to do a pilot to say, let's go deep with one-on-one coaching and let's really get some data on what we could do here together.
Sure.
And so we enrolled a subset of the 600 in one-on-one coaching, and we got real data, and we saw savings go up and credit scores go up by 85%. And the most important thing were just the anecdotal stories and feedback from the employees that then started to circulate in the plants. And so people saying, my God, I can sleep at night for the first time. Can I bring my wife next time? And then it really, that spread then across our portfolio. We've now got a partnership with you guys that's much broader. And so that using that as a bit of a microcosm, that's what we're seeing as we kind of push this through the portfolio, is it really starts to take off.
And going further than that, Lisa, the subgroup he talked about, and again, I want to give Allie Hartman a lot of credit here. She did a lot of the hard work and gets no visibility for us. I want to make sure we acknowledge her, as Pete did. But a subset increased their savings $406 in 8 months. Now, that may not sound like a lot to the average viewer, but I just said before that the average American, not the average poor person,
right,
the average American does not have $400 for an unplanned event. So for a subset to get $406 of savings in 8 months,
stunning.
It's stunning, and their credit score went up 80 points, I believe, this subset. And one of the things I really admire about KKR, the average company would say, okay, we've had you in there for 6 months, 8 months, a year. It's not working. People aren't signing up. So we're going to do something else. Well, the problem with that discussion point is that it's rational.
Yeah.
If poor and struggling people were rational, they wouldn't be poor and struggling.
Yeah, but they're long-term players. We know about KKR.
But this is it's not just they're long-term players. They believe.
Yeah.
But they also understand to change the culture, you need time.
Right.
And so they gave it time, and then slowly but surely people start coming around. Bishop T.D. Jakes called me late last night. And he was saying, John, what I'm trying to do with spirituality is easier. What the entertainers are doing, because people want to feel better. You're trying to give people their medicine, and with a little sugar on top of it. They need it, but they don't want it. And it's going to take a minute for them to come around. Pete, what's your reaction to that?
Look, I agree with all of it, John. The big payoff, you talk about a negative unplanned event. There are positive unplanned events coming once you make all these employees owners.
Yep.
And when they now fall into, God willing, we're gonna sell some of these companies at big prices, and they're gonna make, $50,000, and they started out 5 years ago in significant debt. That's where I see the really big payoff is, and that's where you guys are going to be right by our side, making sure that everybody makes the best of that. John's working with us across a number of companies. One of our bigger companies, Ingersoll Rand, we've now distributed just at that one company over $300 million of value to non-members of management, 80% of whom are hourly employees.
Wow.
That, it's approaching 100% of people's annual income. And that's the kind of stuff, we need your guys' help to make sure we make the most of those opportunities.
Yeah, I've got a cousin who wants to be an employee at Ingersoll Rand tomorrow. Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic.
That's fantastic.
Well, Pete, look.
We're so grateful for you to spend this time with us, Pete, and for all the things you're doing with Operation Hope, but most importantly for the folks that you work with in your different companies and across the enterprise, because KKR is a long-term player. We understand who you are and what you're doing, and you don't have to do this. You've chosen to do it, and in this time of intense and unique environment, not only the pandemic, but the social unrest and all the uncertainty, there's one thing certain with you and your group and the employees that you're working with. So we appreciate you and KKR and the time, but most importantly, the partnership. John.
And I thank you for your leadership, Pete. You didn't have to do this. You could have skated and still got all of your benefits, but you leaned in for those who don't have a voice. And for that, I will forever be grateful. For those all those who don't have a voice, thanks for giving them one and giving them some share ownership as well. Your legacy will be well treated, and I think your shareholder value will also be well suited as a result of this investment you're making. It's not a handout, it's not charity, this is an investment. And I think the last thing I'll say is you're being a role model for Wall Street. And that's really important right now, given that Wall Street's budget is 3 times the size of Washington, D.C.'s. People don't know that. And so if other companies follow suit, just imagine the change we can make in America and around the world. Pete Stavros, Henry Kravitz and Extension, all the partners and friends there, Ali, KKR, thank you.
Thank you, guys.